Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, you know what? We can just go ahead and just start into the next one. Stephen and his partner Robert Rickey, they are basically created marketplacesuperheroes.com. It's basically a course dedicated to selling physical goods on Amazon. Stephen and his partner, with their powers combined, have sold over 4.5 million of physical products in 3 years via fulfillment by Amazon. I was on their webinar last week. It was really good. Basically, I just asked them to come here and more or less do the same thing because a lot of the questions you guys asked were answered on their webinar, so no sense in reinventing the wheel, right? So I am going to hand the floor over to Stephen and Robert, and you guys take it away.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. We're going to see if we can get Robert here with our screen share. As we said, we're almost Hangout virgins, so apologies if we're going to be a second just getting this together. I think Robert might have it together now, though.
Yeah, can you see that, Stephen?
Yep, that's good. Let it rock and roll.
That's on now. You ready to go?
Yep, I think on my screen it's just we're not actually playing, but that might just be, I don't know. I don't know if that's what everybody else can see or not.
Yeah, I can see the presentation.
Perfectly. Okay, great.
Cool.
Okay, well I'll open my presentation from here then. It's gonna be a lot easier. Okay.
As Stephen says, it's a wee bit of Hangout virgins. We're more we're more the other brand type of people.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Okay, right, Robert. So, okay, guys. Well, I'll just get started. So, before we jump into the core part of the presentation and we start talking about all these different Amazon-related things and how to get started with certain products and all this kind of stuff, we just thought we'd give you a quick bit of background about who we are and how we've got to this point. So, my name's Stephen Summers, and I started in this business about 4 years ago with Mr. Robert Rickey here. Before I had actually started an e-commerce business with Robert, I was studying marketing in college at nighttime, and I was trying to become, unfortunately, a professional musician. I say unfortunately because it did not work out. So essentially, I was working in a job during the day because the whole band thing was happening at nighttime, and I was studying marketing at nighttime as well. And so that was my kind of bit of income during the day. Essentially, the band did not work out, as it a lot of times doesn't for people, and I had to try and find a way to get a business going because I was basically unemployable in that I had studied marketing in college, but nobody was going to give me a job, so I was sort of stuck at the time. So I searched and searched online for answers to what I should do, and I went out and did the usual that a lot of you guys probably did, in that I looked at affiliate marketing and all this kind of stuff, and really it didn't sit well with me because it just felt like I'd never really made any money, so why should I tell anybody else how to make money? It just did not seem right. So I thought physical products would be a really good way to go to start a business and learn how to actually make money doing this thing. So I was searching for must have been 2 years trying to find good information that could actually teach me how to do this, but I could never really find anything that useful. I remember one time I was using a guide. It was called, I think it was Simple Market Research or something like that. But all it was telling me was go to Google Keyword Tool. It's now the Keyword Planner, and like search for keywords, and you're gonna find all these different ideas about what to sell and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, I just didn't really find very much value in that, because when you don't know what is selling online and you don't know the market, how can you possibly know what to search in Google Keyword Planner for? So that was a real problem for me. So like I say, went out, started looking at more and more things. They started telling me, oh, go and look at eBay, the listings that have ended, and it'll tell you what's selling. Go look at eBay Pulse, all these different things. But all these tactics really didn't get me anywhere at all. It just made me more confused and just more confused. So then I luckily got to meet this guy, Robert, who's still my partner to this day. And he taught me pretty much from scratch how this whole thing works, because he had a pretty successful business at the time. So what I'm going to do is we'll come back to whenever we start working together. I'll let Robert just jump in and give a quick bit of his background, and then we'll rock on from there.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen.
Sure.
I mean, my background actually comes from, I started off after school in my traditional family business, and we were actually wholesalers of consumer electronic accessories. And whenever I had come out of school, went into the family business, because it was so old school, there was the style of buying and selling locally and everything else. I knew that I wanted to turn that around a little bit and sort of put my stamp on it by bringing it more online with what was coming out in the mid to late 90s, which was sort of websites and e-commerce, and it was very virginal, especially in the European market. And even back then, there was no off-the-shelf packages like there are now. Everything had to be coded, developed from absolute scratch. And this was well before the marketplaces of eBay and Amazon came to town. But it was actually then, whenever these marketplaces came to town, that even though our website had been very, very successful and it really repaid us back dividends very quickly, I knew that these marketplaces were going to be absolutely huge from the start. So I knew I had to get a new project together. So I actually got a partner, not Stephen, it was a previous business. We started off selling on eBay, on Amazon, through the contacts that I'd already built up with inside that industry. So we were still buying locally, still selling locally. But we had a good amount of success with that in the early years. But every time that we did have the success, we had to actually grow the size of the business. Logistics, warehousing, staff, everything had to grow. And this was actually causing a lot of workload on me because I was working, a lot of hours, and I was the one with the knowledge. And even though we were adding in staff at times, every single time we had any growth, we immediately followed that with problems. More premises, more staff, more software. And it almost happened on a 6-monthly basis. This pain would come. And then it was even getting to the stage of managing staff. So the workload was just getting more and more and more. Even though, we were turning over well in excess of $1 million a year, every year. But then, as Stephen said, myself and himself got together and we started looking at what we could dissect from this business. The good bits of it we could rip out, and the sort of the pain points or the badness we could rip away. So again, turning back over to Stephen, who will probably talk about sort of fixed and variable costs that we were looking at that stage.
Yeah, so at the time, thanks Robert, at the time the big problem with that business was there was lots of staff, as Robert mentioned, lots of warehouses and that kind of thing. And this is something that a lot of people get involved in whenever they start in a physical products business. They assume they need to take on these things very, very early. Now this isn't an absolute, not everybody does this, but this is just something that certainly I would have noticed whenever I was starting off. So yeah, at the time with 2 warehouses, 8 staff, and just was costing a lot of money. So no matter what we... Sorry,
I think as well, Stephen, sorry, sometimes it can happen subconsciously. You start off, you're saying it's going to be small. Before you know it, you've just expanded it. You've got somebody into working, and it just takes over.
Absolutely. So that's it. And so, yeah, at the time we had to look at a new model, and this is where we're going to come to really what we've achieved over the time. So we're coming back to those fixed and variable costs in a second, actually, because we want to talk about this traditional way of selling products online. So anyway, we've created this system, as Travis mentioned, whenever we started the webinar. We've sold over $4.5 million physical products in the last 3 years, only on Amazon. We now sell in 7 countries on Amazon. We don't have any warehouse anymore. We got no staff whatsoever. We just have a little office over here in Ireland. We've imported over 300,000 individual products, and we've expanded our business, like I say, into 7 countries. So this traditional way of selling, as we were just sort of talking about, in our opinion, this traditional way is now pretty much dead, in that you pick a product you want to sell, and then you go and try and find ways of selling it, as in channels of selling it. And this is where a lot of people go wrong when they add in these warehouses. They realize that no matter what kind of month you have in a business, your costs are going to stay the exact same. So the new way we'll talk about in a second is more about connecting to a variable cost model. But just to say that this idea of, I am into yoga, so I should sell yoga products, and then I got to go find channels online. It can work for certain people. If you're building a yoga-based brand, maybe you've got actually a teaching brand or something like that, and you're looking to expand into products. But the way we sell our products solely on Amazon, solely using their FBA model, it doesn't work anymore, because we have a really big rule in our business whereby we fulfill demand, we do not create demand, which we'll come back to a little bit later on. But basically all this means is we're looking for what people are currently buying right now online, and how can we find that gap in the market and exploit that gap in the market by creating a more valuable proposition for that customer to actually purchase our products. So just to talk about the power of the marketplace now, assuming we're on that slide, Rob.
We are indeed.
Yeah, that's cool. So marketplaces are really they're the new shopping malls, although they're very, very big shopping malls. And as a lot of you guys will be more than aware, Amazon is now pretty much the leader in e-commerce. It has over 244 million customers. They currently sell in 10 countries. We sell in 7 of them, and we can talk a little bit about why we don't sell in all 10 of them a little bit later on. But just to say that it is so simple now to sell online internationally using Amazon, and we don't say it's always easy, even though we say here it's easy to do it, in that it's simple but not necessarily easy, in that Amazon have brought in a lot of different things like their European unified account, which allows you to sell in 5 European countries using one account. We can kind of get into that a little bit later on if we've got time, but just to say that the barriers really have come down. Currency conversion and all these different things now make it possible for us to sell in all these different countries, in some cases using the same business entity as well, insofar as you can sell in the likes of the US, and you can also sell in Europe using that same LLC if you're in the US, for example, or a limited company if you're in, say, the United Kingdom and you want to sell into the US. Now, there are issues with that, which we could come to probably at another time, but just to say it's absolutely possible. And it's a really good time to get involved, actually, because Europe is where Amazon is growing really crazily now at the minute. The US is still a very strong market for them, as is Canada growing, but Europe is really where it's at, because most sellers, especially in the US, who are in the biggest market, because let's face it, the US Amazon is still the biggest in the world. The US is very, very much not a saturated market, but it's highly competitive at the moment. And that's not to say you can't make a lot of sales there. You can. It's growing for us at the moment at an incredible rate. But just to say that you really have got to look at getting into Europe if you want to catch the boat on Amazon and really exploit it to the max. And the really good news is that you don't need to sell hundreds and hundreds of products at any one time. We actually have a rule, which we're going to talk about in a little while, that will show you just how powerful the multiplication effect of selling in Europe on Amazon actually is. So we needed to look at a more modern approach for doing business in our business a few years ago, and this modern approach we suspect is going to continue in 2015 and beyond, because of the fact that it brings back e-commerce back to its roots again, as I think Robert talks about a lot, and I'll get you to talk about that in a second, Robert. This idea that people used to start businesses in their bedrooms in e-commerce, and people moved from that to, how can I turn this into a huge company, like lots of staff, lots of infrastructure, lots of warehouses. We see it all the time online, and I think that this model of going backwards to a more lean approach, as Eric Ries talks about in the Lean Startup, is really where e-commerce is going, because of the fact that people like Amazon offer their fulfillment by Amazon service. And we'll get into that in a second, exactly what that is. But Robert, what do you think of that, going backwards now to this smaller approach again?
Yeah, I think as you covered, Stephen, that's where the internet started from, and that's where a lot of startups had a serious amount of success back in the day, whenever, as you said, starting from bedrooms or garages or lockups. And that was where, they were able to compete against the high street in terms of physical products, but also now coming into more digital services and everything else, they can compete with the high street so easily, and they can batter them on price because of their overheads being low. But then, as you mentioned, people then started to get involved in small warehouses, and they started to get in staff, and then small warehouses turned into medium size, turned into larger, more staff, more software, and it became out of control, if you want to say it that way. It turned back into an old style business rather than a new style business. Yeah. And especially with the power now of the Amazon system, and attaching that to the outsourcing that you can do, plus, as you have mentioned many times already, and we'll continue to speak about it, this international element, the opportunities here for growth and goals are, it's going out of control itself, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So really this modern approach, it takes in advantage of this Amazon FBA thing, which we will give you a very quick idea of what that is in a second, well, we'll give it to you right now. So basically, Amazon FBA, what this is fulfillment by Amazon, and all this means for whoever doesn't know what this means is that essentially we send our products in bulk to Amazon, be it in the US, be it in Canada, or into the European European marketplaces with Amazon, and they put it into stock. And whenever we sell that product on Amazon, Amazon will then ship that product on our behalf to the customer. They'll also look after the inbound customer services relating to that order, meaning that if a customer has a query of where is my item or something like that, Amazon will take that query. And just to say, like, that query alone, it might sound like not a big deal, but from our experience, whenever we used to manage the customer services in Robert's old business, we used to get anywhere from 200 customer queries a day to 75% or so of those would have been where is my item. And the problem with a where is my item question is that you actually have to go and track where the item is. And a lot of times as e-commerce sellers, you're going to see a lot of other people telling you you should be selling small, light products. And that's not a bad idea for sure. We would go along with that to a degree. But just to say, if that is what your business model is comprised of, well, you are going to likely not be able to send that out on what is called a tracked service, whereby the courier will actually track it and tell you where it is at all times. So the problem then being that you have to, well, you can't actually track the item if you haven't sent it on a tracked delivery. So you got to go back to a customer and say, I actually cannot track this product, and it should be with you in a few days. And as you can see, the customer service queries around something like that is just insane, whereas Amazon pretty much tracks everything, so they deal with it for you. They track it because they get good enough rates whereby they can actually afford that. So it's an absolute no-brainer for business. Some people say it's expensive, which we could probably come to a little bit later on, just to say it's not expensive. But anyway, Amazon Prime is probably the second really big innovation that we'd like to talk about with Amazon. The first innovation being, of course, FBA itself. Amazon Prime, all that means is that a customer pays a one-off fee to Amazon per year, and this gets them into the Amazon Prime program. So whenever they're part of the Prime program, they get access to an expedited delivery service on any product that they buy from Amazon, or if we as Amazon sellers are using FBA, our items actually qualify for this Prime service as well. And the great thing about that being, we get access to all these great services Amazon offer customers, meaning that our conversion rates, i.e. the amount of people that browse on our product listing and actually buy from us, that dramatically increases because customers trust Amazon. They're happy to see Amazon send them the products, and they can get this expedited delivery service, which is very hard to compete with because of the rates Amazon can actually command. And just to show you a very quick graph actually of how Amazon Prime members heavily outspend the non-Prime customers. So you got to take this into consideration when you're selling an FBA. You're actually really molding your business for people who are Prime customers. A lot of people say, and if anybody here is interested in selling on Amazon, you've probably read this, that you should only sell products that are over $35 because if someone's not part of the Prime program, they don't get this Prime shipment and all this stuff. Robert, you could probably explain a little more about that in a second. But just to say that things like that really, really aren't relevant because we only are concerned with the Prime customers.
Yeah, the Prime customers are really the ones that we're after because they are the heavy spenders. They're the ones that go to Amazon and actually search for products. They don't go anywhere else because they've already paid their one-off membership and they're damn sure they're going to take advantage of it at every single juncture that they possibly can. So therefore, any single thing that they need for their house or car or anything else that they may require in their daily life, they're going to go to Amazon first and search for it and say, can I get this? Because I know I'm going to get my free expedited delivery. And in terms of that $35 mark, or it's £10 sterling in the UK, it really is a bit of a misnomer because it's information that's been out there in the ether which is incorrect. They're going along the ethos of that if you've an offering there which is free delivery to every single person online, then that's where you should actually be pricing it at. Sorry, not online, on Amazon, but that's where you should be pricing your item. But I mean, if your item actually sits more comfortably at $25 and you're making a great margin on it, well then if you move it to $35, you are going to take your conversion rates down. And it is just as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much, Robert. Well, with all that said, you've got the idea of where we're going, why we got involved in this, and really why, if you want to get involved in Amazon, you've got to get involved in FBA, you've got to get involved in the international model that Amazon now have out there. So anyway, let's jump on to what we call the Rule of Five, and this is the path to a six-figure business. Robert, just to say, I believe that the slide is stuck on slide 1, but again, we can go back and edit this in post a bit later on, but it's all good anyway. So anyway, let's just keep it rocking. Rule of Five. And the Rule of Five really, the background to the Rule of Five is the fact that a lot of people say that you need to sell hundreds of products online to make any money. And this comes from a lot of times whenever people are buying, not necessarily importing as we do, we import 100% of our products. If they're buying it from, say, local wholesalers, local suppliers, that kind of thing, the problem there is that if you're selling hundreds and hundreds of these SKUs, it can become very hard to manage the actual business, and also you mightn't actually be making very much money per product, so you don't need to sell hundreds to make a really good business in this. Also, you need to sell these products that are expensive. That is also not necessarily true. Coming back to that $35 thing we just discussed, you know, we sell lots of products that are $15.99 up to, we've got a product actually that's $150 that we would sell. But the thing is that it doesn't need to be a certain price. The only price you should never sell at is anything under $7, because you cannot, with the FBA model, really make enough money or enough profit if you're selling something at $7, purely because of the different costs that go into running an FBA-based business. Also, people think like, oh God, I gotta invest thousands of dollars to get started in something like this, and that's also not necessarily true. But what's also not true are these people that are going to tell you, you can actually get started with $100 importing products and selling online, and that is absolutely just not true. And the reason that that's not true is because like if you spend $100 on something and you get, like, I don't know, 10 or 20 units of something in, well, if you sell 10 or 20 units of those over 3 months, what has that really told you about how many products you can actually sell? And the answer is, it's not told you a whole lot about how much, about data. You've no historical data to go on, so that just doesn't work in our opinion either. And finally, there's this idea if you need these special skills and abilities, you don't need any of that kind of stuff, but you do need a system, you do need to know your figures very, very well. So it's all BS in our opinion. But here is actually what you do need. You need 5 products selling in 5 countries, which is a lot simpler than you think, as we mentioned earlier on. You need to have 5 sales of each product per country, and you need to be achieving a $5 net profit per product. And if you can do all that, do you have any idea how much that makes per month? Well, the answer is, makes $18,750 net profit per month. And the reason that this figure is kind of alarming to people is because it is only 5 products. It's only 5 sales per day in 5 different countries, making 5 sales per day. I always mess that up. Sorry, Robert.
That's okay.
The way I say it.
5 products, 5 countries, 5 sales per products per country at an average of $5 profit.
Yeah, I did say that, but just not as clearly as that, so apologies again. But anyway, the $18,750, you put that out over a year, it's $225,000 net profit. And this is actually net profit, not the profit everybody tells you they're actually making, which is like, I'm making 65% and all these random figures people throw out to you. This is real net profit in your pocket. And the main profit percentage that we work on is what's called the profit on investment, which means that whatever we invest in a product, we want to get a return on that. And so if we are looking at 100% profit on investment, which means that if we invest $5, we want to get $10 back, $5 of that being profit, as in we're doubling our money on that particular product. And that's very, very important. So if someone says they're making 65% on an imported product, if they're talking about profit on investment after all their expenses, that's actually not a good investment in physical products, because of the fact that if you're importing and you're shipping by sea, which we highly recommend, all these people shipping by air, we might really upset you, but basically to build a long-term business, you got to be going by sea. And so that's what you got to do to get to this level, this kind of business. And just to say, with 244 million potential customers, you got to ask yourself, could I make 5 sales per day of 5 products, blah, blah, blah. Yes, of course you can. And this is the really exciting multiplier effect of Amazon FBA. So I want to give you a very quick 6-figure case study behind one of our products that we currently sell internationally on Amazon. So Robert usually actually presents this particular example because he is the numbers guy in our business. And I'd like to just let Robert just bounce on and give you an idea of what one of our products does. That's just one line. I have to keep repeating that. So go for it, Rob.
Yeah, and I mean, this does actually blow out our rule of five completely, because it actually almost does it on its own. However, it does just let you see what is potentially potential as time goes on, especially with the international element. This is actually one of our SKUs that we sell currently, and the reason why we're using November 2004 figures is because
2014.
2014, yeah.
That was a while ago.
It's late in the week. It's getting later by the day. So it's 2014 is because December and January will have spikes. So therefore we decided to use a more sort of normal month, if we want to call it that. So in the US, in that month, we sold 310 units of this product. In the UK, we sold 192. And in the German market, which we call DE for Deutschland, we sold 1,281 units in that month. In the other marketplaces that we have this product in, we sold 59 in the month. The product itself sells for an average of $19.99. Obviously in the UK, it's in pound sterling. In Germany, it's in euros. But it all sort of comes round to approximately $20 of an average sales price. The profit on each particular unit, after everything has been paid for, shipping in, shipping out, Amazon fees, the lot, is $8. So therefore, doing some multiplying down, we had monthly sales of that product across all the countries of just shy of 40,000 US dollars, and the average monthly profit, as in clear profit again, was just shy of $15,000 in 1 month in one product. And we actually only have to have an order to our supplier in this product of 1,000 pieces, but we actually have to order 7,000 of these to keep up with demand. So, as it says at the very bottom there, this particular unit nets us down in clear profit $176,832 per year.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a pretty exciting business to be in. Actually, that one product is. Of course, we sell a lot more than that, but that's just to give you an idea of that's a winner. That is a real winner. That is not like a typical result of an FBA product, but it's something that can actually happen with time. And just to say, anybody who's ever had any experience with Amazon FBA, we didn't drive any traffic to this. We didn't pay any money to drive traffic. We've also never put in inserts trying to get people back to our website as we do on Amazon, which is not a good idea. It's against a lot of Amazon's terms of service. We also didn't really do anything remotely fairy dust-ish, which in our world really means that we didn't really do anything crazy with it. We just basically found something in demand and we listed it. We optimized our listing. We got that thing out internationally. We knew our figures, sold at a price that everybody wanted to buy that, and it's still rocking every single day. So
I think as well, Stephen, as you mentioned fairy dust there, we didn't go out and pimp for reviews like a lot of people go out and do. We didn't run coupons and try and drag things. The real work was done in the research, and that's the whole thing about it.
Yeah, and again, that's another strategy or tactic you're going to hear as well. Is a lot of people out there will give their products away basically for $1, in that the workflow behind it is I list the product on Facebook, I then drive people to what's called a bridge page, which is just like a sales page for that particular product. They have videos and all that other kind of stuff there, and they sell the product for $1 inside the website, giving people a coupon for Amazon. People then go to Amazon with the coupon. They basically buy the product then and there with the coupon for $1. So it's great for a customer because they get the product cheap. But the problem is that people say, this helps me now convert way more people because I start moving up the conversion chart within Amazon insofar as my conversion rate increases because it's essentially 100%. And then if that's happening, Amazon are going to say, wow, this is a really great seller. We should move this up the list now because that's what we want to do. We want to sell more products. But you can't really game Amazon's system that way. Some people have had some success with it, but to be honest, if you're starting, as most people start in this business, with not a huge budget, you can't afford to do these kind of things because you might have to give away absolutely hundreds and hundreds of products before you see any kind of traction whatsoever with that particular product. Again, I hate using the word traction, but it's
I think
the
as
word
well.
you got to use.
I think as well, Stephen, what have you actually proved to yourself? You've proved to yourself that you can sell it for $1. Well, that's really good.
That's
But
impressive.
yeah, really impressive. I mean, you can give it away, well done. But whenever it goes to its correct price, the conversion starts falling away. Well, then what's going to happen? It's going to go the opposite direction again, which actually has a reverse effect, and therefore there's no real long-term strategy there. And I call that winging it, whereas we gather data so that we can make educated decisions.
Yeah, and also we'll just go to the next slide there, and we'll just to say, like, considering all this with this business, and this is the truth, you can get started in something like this for as little as $1,000. But the reality is, and this is the real reality, you've got to be starting at least between $1,000 and $3,000 in something like an Amazon FBA business to really start with any kind of numbers. And the reason we start at that level, it all depends. I mean, people always ask us, exactly what should you start with and things like that. And it's hard to give an example that's perfect because it depends on the product it is you're going to buy. If you get an FOB price from your Chinese supplier, it just means a free on board or a freight on board price. Basically, the price you're going to pay to buy the product, getting it to the dock. Right in saying that, Robert? You get
That's
it to the dock at that
Yep.
price, right?
That's the dock by supplier.
Yeah, exactly. So at that kind of price, it all depends. Maybe the product you're buying is $20 FOB, maybe it's $5 FOB, maybe it's $1 FOB. It all depends. And then on that, the value of the product, then you're going to get what's called a minimum order quantity from your supplier, or an MOQ, which basically means that it's the minimum amount of products that that particular person or supplier will accept from you as an order. And that all depends on who you're dealing with. We can get into things like trading companies and factories at that point, but I mean, we would be here all day if we start getting into that kind of stuff. And really, this is just to give you a flavor for how this whole thing works. So just to say, you can start at that kind of level, and you can start small and scale up, but you got to be aware that if you're starting at this kind of level, you're probably only going to be able to bring in one product, which is fine. But we would, again, really, really highly encourage you to consider expanding that product out internationally as soon as you can. So that's just an idea of how much it costs to get started and that kind of thing. So now we want to talk a little bit about this idea of, isn't investing in physical products risky? Because this is something we get asked quite a lot from people who join our marketplace superhero system. And we just want to talk a little bit about different investments you could look at and just give you a picture of what physical products can actually do online on Amazon using FBA. So if you consider a bank investment, your return percentages on a bank investment, being a savings account or something like that, or a mutual fund or something along those lines, is going to be between 3 to 7%. 3% at the low end of savings, been very, very kind at that level. 7% being the upper end, which again, you may not actually be able to achieve with that kind of investment. So the return on a product is actually 100%. So immediately we can see quite a difference. So I want to just show you very, very quickly how that works. And the final point is there's a thing we call the flip. And the flip, actually, do you know what? I'll let Robert, you can explain the flip, Rob, because you'll be better than I explaining that one.
Yeah, so what we're talking about whenever we mean the flip is, you're really looking at flip time. So therefore, if it takes you, let's say 2 to 3 months to actually do your research, bring your product in, get it shipped in, get it sitting in Amazon ready for sale, and it takes another 3 months to actually sell out the inventory amount that you had to bring in, then we would call that a 6-month flip. So therefore, if that being the case, that's where we get that this return can be repeated twice a year at least. So in that instance as well, you wouldn't be then having to research again, you would just be rebuying. So you might actually be able to flip that more times inside that first year.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's take an imaginary investment now of $5,000, because this is the kind of level that some people come in at with this kind of business. We just want to show you the difference. So let's say you save $5,000 at 3% at a bank over 3 years. Remember, this is over 3 years. Well, the result with that particular bank, the investment, will be you make a profit of about $463 off your initial $5,000, getting a profit on your investment of about 9.3%. So not too bad, because it compounds over time. Second example we'd like to give you is, think about now 7%. We buy a mutual fund or something like that. We let it ride for 3 years because that's what all these different financial gurus tell us we should do. Well, we would actually make $1,125 against our initial $5,000. over the 3 years, getting us a profit on investment of 22.5%, which I have to say, for very little risk, actually, isn't a bad return. However, hold on to your hat, because we want to now look at the same example with a physical products-based business. So you invest $5,000 at 100% profit on investment in physical products over 3 years. Well, that $5,000 you initially invested, this sounds unbelievable, but it's true, it would turn into $80,000. You'd actually make a profit on investment of 1,500%, which sounds ridiculous.
Just to actually reprove that is
Yes.
because the original two examples, you were putting your money in and not touching it, because that's the way it was set up in terms of mutual funds or savings. So to do exactly the same thing here, not bringing it out, not touching it, your first flip at 100% would go from 5,000 to 10,000. That could take, let's say, 9 months, and being kind, not even at 6 months. Your second flip would go from 10,000 to 20,000. So you can see where I'm going here. That's another 9 months. Again, being very, very generous in time there. The third 9 months would take you from 20 to 40, and the final 9 months from 40 to 80.
Yeah, so there you go. It's pretty impressive. Again, you wouldn't be touching that money, but just to say, that is what can happen when you do your research correctly, and when you get the right product at the right price, with the right offering for the customer. And just to say that you're actually 70 times better off investing in a physical product than you are in a bank savings account or in a mutual fund or something like that. And of course, yes, we could say it would be good to have a balanced portfolio over time where you got some savings, you got some other investments, and maybe you've got a physical products business as well. And also just to say, we're very realistic. We're not saying that this is like so easy, you buy any product and bring it in and this will happen. No, you've got to do a lot of research up front, and that's something we spend a lot of our time teaching inside our own system to our members. That's a huge part of our process. And I mean, if you're going to get into this business, you've got to know what you're doing on your research, or you're not going to achieve these figures. And just to say, the idea of risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. This is something that Warren Buffett said a few years ago when he was talking about the idea of risk. And this is like a big thing for people getting involved in a physical products business, even inside of Amazon. If you don't know what you're doing, then you are risking, you can risk quite a lot, especially if your minimum order quantity is very high. Also, if you're selling physical products outside of Amazon, if you're, say, building the product, sometimes you can, you can get a low minimum order quantity. But generally speaking, you're going to have to order relatively big. And, if you don't know what you're doing in that world, you can really cost yourself quite a lot of money. So anyway, getting aside from all that kind of stuff, we're just going to talk now about the 12 kind of steps of scaling this kind of business, and we'll talk briefly about the different stages in each step, and then that's going to pretty much wrap up our presentation for today. And then if we've got any questions or anything like that, we can deal with them then. So anyway, this actual formula or blueprint, whatever you want to call it, this is what we use today and what we have used for the last few years, and it's helped us sell over $4.5 million. Again, a big part of our business is the fact that it's simple and lean. And I want to touch on something that I talked about at the start of the presentation now, which is the idea of variable and fixed costs. So I talked about fixed costs, the idea of warehouses, staff, and all that kind of thing, and the fact that if you have those in your business, if you have a good month, it's fine because they're fixed. But if you got a bad month in your business, it's not good because you still got to pay those costs. So moving to the variable model, all that means is we want to try and attach as many costs to our sales as possible, meaning just taking Amazon as our example, if we sell a lot of products on Amazon in a day, we pay a lot of commission to Amazon, and we pay a lot of the other related costs for getting that product shipped out to the customer. However, if we don't sell a lot of products in any one day, well, we don't pay the commissions because we haven't sold, well, let's say anything. Let's imagine we sell nothing in one day. We don't pay any commissions. We don't pay any of the different costs to Amazon because of the fact that nothing was shipped out on that of those orders in that particular day. And also, people might say, well, what about storage? Well, yes, we would pay some storage to Amazon. However, that is also variable because every time we sell a product, the amount of space we're using in that warehouse is coming down all the time. So we're paying marginally less for our storage every single time. And so if you can do this in your business, even outside of Amazon, this is very, very important because you don't want to be stuck with warehouses and all these different things if you can avoid it. Now, sometimes that is unavoidable, And to be honest, those businesses just aren't for Robert and I anymore, because we've been there, we've done it, we know the stress that's involved in it. So that's why we stick to this variable model. So just to say, with this model, like I mentioned earlier on, we sold over, well, Robert included, we include the time Robert had not so long ago, the cumulative total will be over $10 million. And Robert pretty much used a similar version of this system whenever he was selling, the only difference being that they didn't use the variable model, and a million plus individual products have been sold in that time, as well as over 300,000 products imported. So we've done quite a lot with this system. So it does work, and it does seem overly simplistic. The reason for that is we have overly simplified it just to show you the overview of what's going on at every single step. So I'm going to let Robert just go through some of these different points now, because I've done a lot of talking. So Robert, you can just jump in and bring everybody through the 12 different steps, and just make sure to mention what each step is whenever you go through it as well.
Yeah, as we said, we have simplified these down to one sentence or a phrase. So we just want to go into each one a little bit further, not too far, or else, as Stephen said, we'll be here forever. So in terms of finding a product that's in demand, that's something that we covered at the very start. We said that the basis of our process is not trying to create demand, it's fulfilling demand. So we want to drill into Amazon, because that's where our customers are. That's where our customers are using Amazon as a search engine, so that's where they're actually going to find products. They're not going to Google, they're not going to eBay, they're actually Amazon customers. So we want to go to Amazon and start our research process, which we actually call the 4S product gauntlet. 4S because there's 4 steps to it, and each step starts with an S. And that particular first area is a search. Very, very straightforward. And what we're doing in search is we're actually applying item specifics to avoid. That's right, we're actually eradicating products rather than selecting them almost. And this then starts to apply viability to a product. Is this product viable, or is it not viable? And what we mean by these item specifics to avoid, there's a big, big list of them, but to give you some examples would be glass, we don't go near that. Electronics, we don't go near that. The reason why we don't do electronics is you can have issues with it, and it's not international. We also don't do items of a certain length or a certain weight, not because, let's say, large or heavy items are not good, but it's more so that if they go outside of the boundaries of what Amazon can fulfill, then we don't touch them. And the products then move forward into the shortlist phase, where we start looking at the logic behind the product. Is it logical for me to sell this? This then takes us on to point 2, where we're looking at sourcing and pricing, or pricing and sourcing as I should really have it. And this is where we enter the third S in this 4S product gauntlet, which is select. So we're actually drilling down then on the profitability of the item. So we've looked at viability, we've looked at logic, and now we're looking at profitability. So we're looking for certain variables that we don't have at the minute, such as the FOB price, as Stephen mentioned, the dimensions of a product, and the weights of the product. And these are actually some of the things that other people out there don't tell you to look for. They don't care about dimensions, they don't care about weight, and yet they are critical, absolutely critical to working out your actual profits down to the last cent or the last penny in the European market. So that's a big, big part of our system as well. We then go on to point 3, where we're looking, as again said, the course, and we're looking to bring in some sort of golden nugget here that even if you don't ever contact us again or anything like that, if you're going to sell something on the Amazon platform and you're going after some research, you're looking at a product, you've got to at least match what's out there. You can't come in with a lesser offering and expect it to fly off the shelves. It's got to at least match what's out there. So we're actually bringing in samples, testing them out to see whether they tick all the boxes that we require them to tick. Then as point 4, as Stephen mentioned, this MOQ, what we're actually looking to do is to find what the suppliers are willing to sell to us in terms of quantities, and we want to almost renegotiate that again. If we can add 10 cents on to reduce the order by half, that's going to help us in terms of bringing down the quantities that we have to bring in to start with. which can also mean that we can get involved in more than one product at a go. So, and again, myself and Stephen have developed a lot of scripts over the years, which we're happy to give anybody, and you can actually go and get those trial orders negotiated. Then we move on to the actual importing process, where again we've built up a plethora of a network of contacts and how to actually bring these products into countries like the US or the UK. And I guess this is somewhere where I actually have a real big pain point, and I'm very contrarian to what a lot of people out there say, which is my pain point here comes with this speed scenario. A lot of people want to import these products by couriers or by air freight, and these air freights actually kill profitability, or they certainly kill the excess profit that you can make. And it doesn't really bode well for the planning and research stage. It's more about speed rather than about haste. So I have a real problem in that area. 6, 7, and 8 are really more to do with what you're doing inside your Amazon account, because you're going to be preparing orders to ship in stuff into their fulfillment centers. You're going to be arranging deliveries by pallets or by boxes, more likely boxes to start with, and then moving on to pallets to take advantage of the economies of scale that you can get. And then we look at optimizing the listings. And again, as we mentioned, there's no fairy dust or anything sprinkled over this. This is hard work at the start, and then optimizing listings for conversion. Letting people know that our products have the features that they are wanting to have in their product. Moving on, then we look at the last sort of the final mile, if you want to call this. So whenever your items are in, we're going to be monitoring sales and trying to ascertain these run rates. And a run rate is really the amount of product that you can sell in any given period. The period that we like to use, we call a term, which is a 2-weekly period, or 14 days. And the reason that we do that is twofold. The first being that Amazon generally pays you out on a 2-weekly basis, and also because a 2-weekly basis doesn't change any numbers, whereas a month could be 31 or 30 or 28 in some instances. A 2-week period is always 14 days. So that's why we use those run rates, which actually allow us to start forecasting and planning the numbers behind what's going to happen in the future. And if we know what run rates we're going to achieve and what we're going to actually sell, and we know the sales price that we're selling them for, well, then we can actually start to plan out our cash way, way, way into the future. Which brings us nicely on to points 11 and 12, whereby we can reorder with ease and we can add in new products with frequency.
Great. Cool. Thank you very much, Robert, for that. So that's really our process. Like I say, it's the kind of step-by-step thing, and there is a lot more to every single step, and especially when you start to expand internationally. Again, like we mentioned earlier on, it is simple, but it's not necessarily easy insofar as you come into a lot of different things, like a lot of US sellers. I don't mean to pick on US sellers, but I've just seen it a lot with our US friends. They would tend to immediately start selling into Europe via an LLC. A lot of people have a limited liability corporation set up over in the States. And the problem there, as just one example, is that you have to register in Europe immediately for what is called VAT, which is value-added tax. And all value-added tax is, it's just a sales tax like you guys have in the States, and it's also here in Europe as well. And so the difference really is that VAT, A, is a lot higher than the sales tax that we typically would be charged in the States. Also, there's a couple of other things, like whenever you're importing a product into the European Union, you have to pay a level of VAT to the government up front. Let's not get into that too much, or again, we could be here for a while. But just to say that VAT is something you got to be aware of. Now, if you come into the European Union with an LLC straight away, you must register for VAT immediately by law, I suppose, over here. But the difference is we would do other things, like we would recommend, well, maybe you don't set up an LLC straight away. There are other options for a US company to set up in this neck of the woods. And we've gone to a lot of work there to basically bring together all of our contacts. It took us absolutely years to put together, and that's what we provide through people in our group. But just to say, look, if you never even speak to us again or whatever, you just take the information, even if you're not selling on Amazon right now, you're doing something else, that's just one piece of advice I would give you. If you're coming into Europe, don't necessarily just come in with an LLC and try and register for VAT straight away. Look into your options. There are a lot more options. Also, be mindful if you're selling electronic products, as something Robert mentioned earlier on. We might get a lot of people booing us quickly when we say we don't sell electronic products. We don't sell them on Amazon because they're difficult to sell. It's different if you're selling your own website potentially. We just find that there are fault rates and things like that with electronic products we'd rather avoid. And also, if you're selling in the European Union, if you're selling something that is powered with a plug, well, problem there is you've got all different, 3-pin plugs and 2-pin and all this kind of thing. So you've got compatibility issues straight away, and that they're just reasons we try to avoid all that kind of stuff. So
I think the big figure there, Stephen, just to drop on people, as you say, if they never ever get on with us or do anything like that, is that I always like to mention the figure that you can actually save in terms of doing things properly, business structure wise.
Yes.
And that figure is in excess of $15,000. That's the actual saving that can be made doing it the right way, which is kind of frightening.
Yeah, because again, just to give a really quick reason behind that, the reason that Robert's come up with that figure is because if you're selling it with an LLC directly into Europe, you're going to be charged VAT straight away, or rather, you are going to have to charge your customers VAT straight away and collect that for the government and pay it to the government. But if you use a different business structure that we would recommend, you can avoid having to charge VAT straight away. You have a threshold of VAT whereby you can make sales with no VAT charged and basically save that kind of $15,000 mark. So that's a quick one. So let's just jump on from that because we're getting very specific. So the final part of our presentation, and we're going to finish up then, are the 7 biggest mistakes new sellers make. And we're going to really, and whenever we say new sellers, we're talking about new Amazon sellers as well, just to say. So the first error, we talked about this before earlier on, it's that they try to create demand instead of fulfilling that demand. And the reality is that it is very expensive to create demand. If you look at somebody like Google, Apple, any of those big companies, they create demand for new products all the time. It costs them a ton of money in advertising, billions per year in advertising, in fact. And also, they have extremely strong brands that it is with very strong brand recognition, and still cost them billions, millions every single year to do that. So you as a smaller seller starting off from scratch do not want to get involved in this. It's far better to find out what's selling, do it better, add value, and be competitive with that offer. And so the thing is that a lot of different systems say different things, and one of the main things people say is you should find products on Amazon that sell under 500 in a parent category. A parent category is just simply home and kitchen. That's a big category in Amazon, and in that category you should be under 500. And if you're not under 500, well, you shouldn't necessarily look into researching that straight away. So these are the quote unquote hot products in a particular category. The second thing people say is that it should have less than 1,000 reviews, which is fair enough to a degree. And finally, it should be between $7 and $30, which we would actually agree with wholeheartedly. So they're the 3 things a lot of people say. There's actually a lot more than 3. And if you're not aware of all these different things and how to really competitively do competitive analysis, it can be very hard to figure out exactly what you should sell. But just to say that the genesis of the idea is fulfilling that demand and selling what's already in demand. So anyway, you should add bonuses or bigger pack sizes to add value. Again, some people do this in that they do add a bonus. We've seen people, though, the problem is they put in a little insert into their product to say, to get your bonus, come back to our website and register on our website. And that's not something Amazon really likes. It's a gray hat tactic. It's not black hat. So it's not completely not allowed, but it's pretty much, you just shouldn't do it. Don't get involved in it if you're getting started there. And that's the thing. So you can add bonuses into your product by adding physical bonuses, or you can add in a guide or something like that, which you can get printed. You can add in with your product depending on what you're selling. You see it often with health products like, again, we wouldn't sell these because they're electronic, but a blender or a juicer or something like that might have a little guide in it to teach you how to make, whatever, smoothies or something like that. And then bigger pack sizes is something we focus on a lot. We've actually built software to not only manage your entire Amazon business, but also to figure out your profitability and figure out what we call a pack size sweet spot. And all a pack size is, if you're selling a light bulb is our favorite example. I suppose light bulb is the same phrase in the US. I'm assuming everybody's going to understand me. But all I mean is something that we would use to turn on the light and the light comes on, a light bulb. Anyway, a lot of people we would have seen would sell one light bulb, especially big brands like Philips or somebody like that in Europe. They might just list one light bulb on Amazon and try and sell it. and Amazon might sell it on their behalf, and it might do okay. But generally speaking, people will not just buy one light bulb online at one time. It just wouldn't make any sense. They would want to buy more than one at one time. So what we do is we create pack sizes to take advantage of that, add value to the offer, and just basically over-deliver for the customer, and that works very, very well. But there is a sweet spot, and that's the point, that you're making the POI that we talked about earlier on, that profit on investment of 100%. It's important to calculate that, because sometimes with a pack size you can become unprofitable, and also sometimes with a pack size you could just be selling far too many in a pack. Like, the likelihood of somebody buying 100 light bulbs in one sale is relatively remote, unless they're a wholesaler or a shop or something, or a store or something like that. So anyway, the final thing we would say is that, look, products that have a BSR, a bestseller rank on Amazon, of less than 10,000 actually sell very well. We even have a product in the US that is at 17,000 and a bit in the home category, and that actually does about 15 sales a day, and it makes us a profit of, I'm assuming, about $5. Roughly correct, Robert? $4 to $5?
That's actually an $8 product.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, well, okay, that one, yes.
But you're on the right side.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we're thinking of a different one. But anyway, if it's $8, Robert says, by 15 a day, you can see it's very, very profitable product. So just keep that in mind whenever if you're getting involved in this kind of business. Second, a lot of these guys, when you're beginning, you can buy from local white label manufacturers who have zero loyalty. When we talk about white label, we've got two kind of definitions here that aren't the way we define it, but it's not necessarily correct by the dictionary version. A white label manufacturer, or supplier really, as we would call them, that's somebody who already manufactures a product, brings it into, say, the US, or let's just say the UK. They hold it in stock. You buy that from that manufacturer, that supplier, and then they put your branding on that product for you. So it's basically you're sourcing domestically. And the problem with a lot of those guys is they don't have any loyalty, and also the next big problem is that you're possibly going to be selling something that is identical to everybody else, which isn't a good idea on somewhere like Amazon, where it's so easy to see all the different products that are available at any one time. And just to say, what a lot of these guys will tell you to do is, search white label manufacturer, white label supplier, and like Google, you find their website, you might pick out a product you like, you tell them to package it up and that kind of thing. But again, the loyalty is an issue, but also the listing protection is an issue. When we talk about that, all we're really saying is, on Amazon, whenever you list a product, you can only list one of a product at one time with one unique barcode. So if somebody is selling the exact same product as you, if it's a branded product, for example, and they've got the same EAN or barcode, it's another name for a barcode, they can just list against you and compete with you to get what's called access to what's called the buy box on Amazon, and that's a real problem. Now, if you are buying from a white label supplier, the problem then is that you're going to have other people jumping on your listing because they might be buying from the same white label manufacturer. Even though you might have your own unique barcode, people will still jump on and try and list against you, and it's just a pain. And also, like I mentioned earlier on, if every product's identical, why would customers can't see any difference? And that's our third point of identical products. The only real way of beating your competition, if you're selling something that's identical with no bonuses, no pack sizes, you got to lower your price, because there's nothing else you can do in a marketplace like Amazon to really stand out. And that's something that we obviously really highly recommend you not doing, is buying something that everybody else is buying. I did it when I started. I came out okay. I didn't lose money, but I didn't make any money. My margin was cut dramatically because I just copied what everybody else was doing. So, the next point I want to make there is that a lot of new sellers will purchase branded products that are at a special price. We got involved in this whenever we started, in that we bought branded products that were from a wholesaler who got it at a really good price from maybe the direct supplier, or possibly even another wholesaler, as it can happen sometimes if they're trying to blow out products or something like that. And the problem there is that, it's good that you can buy at a good price, but the bad part of this is that the profits are squeezed hugely, because other people are going to buy that same product from that wholesaler, because like the white label domestic suppliers we talked about, they don't have really any loyalty to you whatsoever, because they just want to sell products, they want to get it moved, they don't care where you sell it, just get rid of it. And that's a real problem, because only one person can get access to a buy box at any one time, as I mentioned earlier on Amazon. There's very little sustainability in that kind of business model. We did it years ago, and every single month, whenever we got in a disbursement or a payment from Amazon, we always wondered why every 2 weeks our money would just flow back out the door again in huge quantities. And it was just because of this. It was not sustainable. That's why we actually don't do it anymore. We only buy imported products that are our own brand. So then a lot of new sellers don't expand internationally, and this is crazy. I can understand at the same time why people don't do it, and it's because they're not given the information they need. They don't have the contacts they need in every single country to get something like this set up, because you do need an accountant in the likes of the European Union. You do need somebody who's going to take care of your logistics, especially if you're using an outsourced model like us. You got to have what we call a freight hub, which is a building you can send your products to, who will prepare them, prepare the orders and get them into Amazon. A lot of people try and send stuff straight into Amazon, as Robert mentioned earlier on, with a courier or something like that. That is really bad news for a lot of reasons we just can't get into right now. But just to say, you got to have these partners in place. And, you know, before this was very difficult. We do offer all this kind of stuff to our members in our system, but that's just to mention that. So the great thing about Amazon now is that all you got to do in Europe, let's just talk about Europe for a second, to sell there really is just get your listings translated. And the reason that that's the case is Amazon have what is called two things. You've got a unified European account, which means that you can manage 5 countries from one seller central account, which is amazing. And the second thing that's kind of connected to that is what's called the European Fulfillment Network, or the EFN. And what the EFN does is basically it allows you to ship all your products to one location. Our example is always the United Kingdom, because if we were selling in the US and you're an English speaker, you're going to want to go to the UK first because they also speak English. It's just the easiest way to initially expand. And if you're working with a service provider in the UK, you don't have any language barriers or anything like that. So let's just say your products are sitting in the United Kingdom. Even if you're a UK seller, this still applies because most European sellers haven't expanded on all the different platforms that they could sell in. So you send your products to that one country, Amazon hold it in stock, and you can then translate your listings and basically activate those listings on all the different Amazon platforms in Europe. And you can then get Amazon to ship those products to each individual customer as they buy from your one stock source in the United Kingdom. So just to confirm, really what that means is you list your product in Germany in German, France in French, so on and so forth. Whenever somebody comes on to Amazon Germany, sees your product and buys it, Amazon will ship it from the United Kingdom to that customer, and they'll charge you a slight fee, an EFN fee. So just to say that that's huge for your international expansion, because Amazon take care of all the logistics to the customer. They take care of the customer services, so you don't need to employ people to speak those languages at all. The only request you'll ever get is an invoice request. And again, I'm not going to go into that now because we're pretty much up at our time already. So just to say, you can go to somewhere like translated.net and get your products translated into all the different languages. It's really easy, really, really cost effective. So on from that, we would talk about the fact that a lot of new sellers, they don't have a way to manage their sales, manage their stock or forecast their sales. And if you're in a stock-based business and you don't understand how to forecast out into the future and understand when to order so that you never run out of stock, well, you're not going to be able to grow a business, because in a stock-based business, if you don't have stock, you don't have a business. And all of this feeds into cash flow, because if you know how many products you can sell in a certain period, and you know what you're going to be able to sell into the future as well as you forecast, you're going to know how much it's going to cost you to bring in enough stock to make those sales ongoing. And that's very, very important, because if you don't have enough cash allocated for those sales into the future, two things can happen. One, you may not be able to order enough stock ongoing to keep yourself in business, and two, you might run out of cash, whereby you can't reorder at a certain point. And that's definitely a problem if, for example, you start paying yourself too much money too early on in the business. You don't have enough money to order more stock, and if you've got no stock, you got no business. So the last point is this idea of zero business structure in place. We see this all the time. A lot of people don't want to start up LLCs or limited liability companies over here in the European Union. And the reason they don't want to do that is because there is a cost to it. But if you're going to get started in this business, you want to build something that is going to really it's going to be something you're going to build on into the future. You need to have a business structure in place that allows you to do it, because this is real business. This is real money changing hands, and there are real issues attached if you don't have a limited liability company. Even if you're just starting from scratch and you're selling a physical product and you're a sole proprietor, a sole trader, and something happens with your product. Let's say you've got an electronic product and that causes a fire somewhere. Again, I hate to talk about doomsday scenario. Another reason we don't sell electronic products, of course, but just to say, if this does happen and you're a sole proprietor, you are personally liable for any damages that are caused with your product. And that's something people don't realize. They might say, oh, well, it's the supplier's fault. Well, let me tell you, if you do end up in that scenario, the book will stop with you to a degree, especially if you're dealing with Chinese suppliers. It's just very hard with different jurisdictions and that kind of thing for anything to happen there. So you've got to be insured. You've got to have a structure where you've got limited liability. That is very, very important. So that's really the end of this presentation. We've hit you with a lot of information, like a lot, and I understand that. So I talk very fast to try and get through it all. I'm going to let Travis come back on, and if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them. If there's no questions, we can just bounce off, and you guys can keep rocking.
Well, actually, you guys nailed the nail on the head. There were a lot of the questions were the top mistakes you've seen, which you covered. For my private label brand, I'm laying out a ton of cash to send product to Amazon. They're probably focusing on the wrong products. That's why they're spending so much cash up front. You're not in that $1,000 to $3,000 range.
I think as well, in terms of that, Travis, it could certainly be that air freight thing that we covered. In terms of that air shipment, the price just goes through the absolute roof, whereas if you can look at sea shipment, if you want to contact us, we've got all the contacts there. It's not a problem.
And also, just to say, we actually I had a message from a guy I know today who is an Amazon seller, not part of our system per se, but the thing about it was he just said to me, hey, we've placed a big order. We usually get our freight quoted from our supplier in China, and all of a sudden it's $3,000 more than we expected, and it's a bit of a meltdown now because we got a rush. He's got a rush to try and get his product shipped, and the thing there is that we don't recommend. Just as another little point, we do not recommend you allow your Chinese company to ship your product for you if you're using sea freight. We would highly recommend you work with a freight forwarder who can make it cost effective, but also if you're letting the Chinese supplier do absolutely everything, it's not always a good idea.
And I guess this one question here, this is kind of unique. This is for Robert. What was taking so much of your time with your previous business model before you guys went lean?
Well, certainly customer services was an absolute nightmare because we had to answer every single question that came in, and as Stephen touched on slightly, sometimes one question became 2 or 3 questions, and it was just eating into time. But also we were doing all the sourcing locally, so we had to place orders over and over again. We had to reprice all our items because we were competing against other sellers, and this was having to be done every single day. We also did all of our own fulfillment, so every single item that we sold had to be brought into stock, put away into stock, brought out of stock, put into a bag, shipped out, accounted for. And you can take a Monday, for example, which would have been an absolute disaster zone because you've got Friday night sales all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and you just get hit with an absolute snowstorm on a Monday morning. I was going to say a different word there, but I used snowstorm.
It's a family show.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. Nice save.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, gotcha. Well, guys, the content was awesome. I'll send the vid to both you guys so you do some editing magic. You literally touched on every question that came in before. Stephen, as I mentioned, I sent out a little survey before, so I get questions. You hit them all. Even the questions that were coming in, you guys hit on those as you went through the presentation. So this was really awesome. I know it's probably dinner time over there, 6 hours, 7 hours ahead. I really appreciate you guys getting on this and being a part and sharing your information.
Sure. Well, again, it's been a pleasure to do it, Travis. We're always happy to share some knowledge, as I know what it's like. When I started 4 years ago, there was no good information out there, and it's great that you're bringing some stuff out there for people. You're bringing multiple business models as well, as the previous speaker actually just mentioned when I was coming on.